I've been loved, I've been given money. I've had cars bought for me. I've been flown overseas by men who love you, you know what I mean? But I was just not, it was not satisfying. So I said, I'm done. I want somebody who will love me the way you want your daughter that you love to be loved. You can throw in, tall, dark, and handsome. So,
You can
and
as
yeah,
well
you can just sprinkle my nice.
I call it the time of the silence of God, where you've committed yourself to God, and you have done all what it takes. You have run away from sin.
Yes.
You are praying. You are trying to do everything right
correct.
with God. And what
yes.
you're seeking is, God, can you just tell me what's next?
Yes,
What do I need to do? And then out of that, you are lonely because you've chosen to be with
That
God.
is true. Yeah.
You said we're interesting. Nobody says men are interesting. It's always men are dogs.
No.
Trash,
Men are interesting. Men are very interesting. They are very good in investors.
All right.
They are low risk creatures.
I think it's women who decide who they get into a relationship with. But it's men who decide who they get married to. Hello everybody, welcome to yet another episode of your favorite podcast, The Love, Life and God podcast, where we talk about all things love, all things life, and all things God. And I'm so excited every time I come here to bring you another episode. And I want to encourage you to subscribe, to comment, to share, but also make sure that you click the notification button so that you're not left out when we record another episode. I'm so grateful for you, and the engagement is increasing, and I'm so excited, and I want to make sure that we continue to give you the content that you need and the content that you deserve. So subscribing makes sure that our channel grows so that we can also get more interest, and so that we can also get the guests that you would want to see. So until now, around 60% of our viewers are subscribed. So I want to make sure that we raise the bar. Let's get to 70. So make sure that if you are watching me, you have subscribed and you have clicked the notification button. So today I have a guest in the studio, someone that I've known as a servant of God, someone that I've known as a sister, someone that I've known as a friend, but someone who is also a professional. She's an advocate. Mainly she deals with issues that is to do with divorce. So I'm very excited today to have my sister advocate Wabantu.
How are you, Ambassador?
I'm blessed. Good to see you.
It's good to be here.
How's work?
Busy as usual, but this is what we do.
And how's ministry?
Ministry is wonderful.
Tell me, how do you balance ministry and work and music and everything that happens in your life?
Well, what I normally like to say is, if you are passionate about something, you don't have working hours.
All right.
And you have to place boundaries, around yourself. So obviously, if you're a person who comes out on radio or on television, everybody somehow wants to call you and they want to talk to you and tell you their personal story.
All right.
So you have to manage that. But you know what? Music is a passion for me.
All right.
Ministry is a passion for me.
All right.
My work, I love my work.
Wow.
And so it works together, and you have to stretch time, I suppose. You work over the weekend, sometimes after hours, but it's you're doing something you love, so it's not a pain.
And everything works together for good.
Everything works together for good.
For those who love the Lord.
Absolutely.
So who are you?
Oh, okay. Okay, so I am Nyari Maphosa, of course.
Yes.
I am a legal practitioner by profession, and I've been in the legal business and the legal fraternity for quite a while. I am a partner with Soya and Mukushi Legal Practitioners.
Okay.
And I'm also an international evangelist. So we travel all over the world, and that's the best part, the traveling part. That's the best part of ministry.
Especially with the gospel.
Yes, especially with the gospel. That's when you do your holidays.
That's an exciting life.
And I'm a musician, of course. I'm a singer, songwriter. I sing with Breeze Music group. And I'm a legal expert on 3 radio stations.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And how's been that going?
That has been amazing because it's also fed into my social media profile.
Okay.
So when you become an influencer, some people, because of course they ask you, so how do we contact you, after a show? And then you refer them to, you can come to my YouTube, you can come to my Facebook, you can come to my Instagram and TikTok. And then people actually come. And so that everything feeds into each other. And sometimes you actually get legal work from any of the different platforms. So all things work together for good.
And your work being an evangelist, I don't see a lot of women in ministry, especially in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Maybe it might not because I have not interacted with any, but that's just from what I see. From your programs, from the videos that I see. It looks like you there, you are charged, you are dominant, and you are doing the most, especially in an environment that is infested with men.
With men.
Generally, I think the Christian environment and our African environment is also male-dominated and religion. But how do you, what's your power? What has kept you there? Because I see your videos and you are there with these men, but you're dominant, you're the one who's saying the most, and a lot of things that also even make sense.
Yeah, well, you know what, I suppose I cannot explain myself without explaining my walk with God. So for me, in brief, and I'm actually writing a book about it. Maybe inspire someone. I am in a covenant with God. Actually, I made a covenant with God like 20 years ago, or more than 20 years ago.
All right.
And I think there was just a time that I was just sick and tired of being, like a committed churchgoer. I was raised a Christian, I suppose Christian.
Yes.
But I think a lot of people are just committed churchgoers. They like to go to church, they like the company, they like the fellowship, but they're not necessarily Christians. So I came to a point where I just say to myself, look, I'm done with this. I want to have like a real walk with God, and so I approached God, and because he says, whoever comes to God must believe that he is. So we have to go to God and know who he is.
Yes.
So I said to him, who is hanging out with you these days? That's literally the prayer that I prayed. I said, Lord, you used to walk with Enoch, you had Noah, you had Abraham, you had all those guys, the Apostle Paul, and in this generation, who is your Abraham? Who's your friend? If that space is open, I'm here. I'm available. And you know what? He answered my prayers in just the most profound way. And ever since then, God has been giving me so much wisdom, I suppose beyond normal understanding. And with that comes the duty and the responsibility to disseminate. So when I speak, I don't speak of my own or to try and be popular or to try and get followers. No. It's because you have a fire in your bones. God gives you stuff and you have to go and say it. It's like you can't stop.
You can't
stop it. And so when you dominate, it's because God gave us dominion. But normally we don't dominate because we're not aware of the dominion that God has given us or the capacity that we have. But the minute you start your walk with God, he reminds you that he's capacitated you. And you don't have to be searching as to what to say. He gives it to you like, Christ promised. He said, when you stand before tribunals and you stand before court, you don't have to think about what to say. The Spirit will give you
utterance. And that's beautiful. But tell me, when you say covenant, What do you mean? Because, I think there are a lot of covenants. Somebody could think maybe it was just that covenant to preach the gospel,
Yeah.
or covenant to just say, you know what, God, I'm here.
Yeah.
I surrender myself, use me. Or maybe you're a sister.
No, not in that sense. I am a sister, but not in that sense.
All right.
Okay, maybe what I can just say is at the time that I decided to make a covenant with God, it was the time when, you're like a really young person and you're getting into relationships and you're coming out of relationships, getting to relationships. I was sick and tired of that, and I was sick and tired of not knowing what I wanted, or thinking I like this and then discovering that it's disappointing or whatever the case may be. So I decided that, God, I am going to give you my chastity, So the covenant, it was like, you're going to do this for me and I'm going to do this. Wow. Okay, so it was like a commitment that I was making. I said, number one, you know what, how can I put it? But I'm going to keep myself for my husband, number one, So I'm giving you my chastity. So you are taking care of it. It's not mine to give or to withhold, okay? Number one. Number two, you are going to give me a husband, and the husband you're going to give me is going to have a relationship with you outside of me.
Wow.
Outside of me.
Wow.
I don't want a crutch.
Wow.
And then I said, I want that man to love me the way you want your daughter to be loved.
Wow.
I've been loved, I've been given money. I've had cars bought for me. I've been flown overseas by men who love you. You know what I mean? But I was just it was not satisfying. So I said, I'm done. I've received flowers. Like what, I've been introduced to families and everything. But now that's not enough for me. I want somebody who will love me the way that will satisfy you as God, the way you want your daughter that you love to be loved. Yeah. And, then I said, and you can throw in, tall, dark, and handsome. You can as well. You can just sprinkle my nice, And I said, for that, I'm committing I'm giving you my life. I'm just going to stop making my own decisions for myself. I'm going to completely depend on you, and so if you're okay with that, then tell me. So I'll just say quickly, and that'll be very weird maybe to everyone, but God does things in the most amazing way. There was just a time when I was feeling like God was not answering fast enough, because I sort of went into seclusion for that covenant. I sort of blocked out everyone. I wanted to talk to God. I was searching for him. I was seeking him, So I went for about 6 months, and I was praying 8 times a day. Wow. For 6 months. So I would pray when I woke up at 6 a.m. I'd pray just before I left for work. Then I'd pray the minute I got to work. Then I'd pray at lunchtime when I'd do my devotion. Then I'd pray when I left work. Wow. Then I'd pray when I got home. Then I'd pray when I went to bed. Then I'd wake up at 3 a.m. to pray. And that was 8 times. So I was like, the Muslims have nothing on me. Wow. I'm doing 8 times. And it was, and it was great, because God was like, and I just said to God, God, I am done with, commentaries with, these, say, men of God and women of God who are supposed to have, inspiration, not meaning any disrespect, but I was like, I'm not reading Charles Spurgeon. I'm not reading Branham. I'm not reading Ellen White. I'm not reading any of those people. I want you to teach me your word from the Bible straight. I want at your feet. I'm going to sit at your feet. I'm going to read. You're going to explain to me. Yes. And then he began to do that, and I was amazed. But ultimately, there was a time when I just felt like I just hit rock bottom. I'm like, God, I've put myself out there for you, and you have not responded to me. And I remember I was in a cab.
And I always tell people about that time, which is actually called, I call it the time of the silence of God, where you have you've committed yourself to God, and you have done all what it takes. You have run away from sin.
Yes.
You are praying. You're trying to do everything right
correct.
with God. And what you're
his-
seeking is, God, can you just tell me what's next?
Yes,
What
tell
do
me
I need
what
to
to
do?
do.
And then out of that, you are lonely because you've chosen to be with
That
God
is true, yeah.
in a time, where it's not favorable,
Yeah.
to do so.
Yeah.
So tell me what that looks like, and
It
I'm
was-
interested in knowing how then you pass that, because I believe that
Yeah.
there are a lot of people who get into covenants with God,
Yeah.
and there are a lot of people who also are praying, and they are listening, they're trying
Yeah.
to listen.
They're
And
seeking
sometimes
him.
even God has spoken. When you read the book of Genesis, you find that the Bible says, and Noah, after the flood,
Yeah.
God spoke to him before the flood.
Yeah.
He did what he has to do. Through the time that even the floods, went quiet.
Yeah.
God was not speaking. He had to actually send a raven
I'm
to
telling
go
you.
and look
Yes,
at,
to see what's happening.
what's happening there, because God is silent.
Yeah.
And you know what? The Bible then says that, and after the flood, Noah
Yeah.
became a farmer. What did he farm? Grapes. To do what? To
To
drink
drink.
some of his wine. Why did that happen? I
Yeah,
think then
that's-
God is just a way of, giving you an assignment,
Yeah.
agreeing you on things, and sometimes
Yeah.
he gets silent.
That is true. And when he gets silent, you can get frustrated.
Yeah.
I mean, during my walk with God, I've been upset with him. Do you know what I mean? I've kind of like asked him. And these days it's really amazing because he's always like on the ball. Now that we're together, I know sort of like what's happening. So like, for instance, I'm gonna go back to your question, but
Yeah.
just there was a time I remember that my brother was falsely accused of having molested a young child. And I was called, and I was actually having a program with Breeze. And the police people called me and they said, we're holding your brother. And it was like a Saturday evening, so I could only go the next morning. And that night, I dreamt that we were in court and the magistrate was saying he's not guilty, and because sorry, it's no disrespect, but with men, you just never know, you can't say it's my brother, so he can't do this. So I needed clarity from God to say, okay, when I'm approaching this case, did he do it? Did he not do it? And I actually dreamt that, the magistrate was clearing him. And so as I was dealing with the case, I knew in my heart that he was innocent. And of course, he was discharged. But like 2 days ago, I had another case involving a Chinese guy. And I think, he was fleeced of money. And I recall that the accused person who fleeced him money applied to have the matter dismissed, right? And I remember that in the same way, because this happened like maybe 8 years ago or something, but in the same way, I remember being in court again and the magistrate dismissing that case, okay, and obviously finding for my client. And so the next morning, I sent a message to the prosecutor and I said, the case is going to be dismissed. The application is going to be dismissed. So can you just tell me when the case is carrying on? So he was very surprised to say, how did you know? Did you talk to the magistrate? I said, no, I didn't talk to the magistrate, but, God kind of like showed me in that sense. Yeah. But back to the silence of God. At that time, I may as well tell you that I was like under pressure to get married to a certain gentleman that I had been dating. Okay. And it was that big decision that I had to make to say, shall I marry this gentleman or shall I not? Yeah. He was known in my family. We dated for 3 years. He was boxed up. He was just a year older than me. So it's not like he was an old Sukuru or anything. Yeah. But I knew that that marriage decision was going to make a change in my whole life. Yeah. And that's why I said to God, talk to me, And I remember that I was and now everybody, like he was frustrated, my family was frustrated, everybody was frustrated with me, but I was waiting on God, and that's why I was frustrated to say, Lord, the pressure is mounting here, what do I do? And what then happened was I was in a cab, and I remember I just had one Bible, right? It was a gift, that I'd been given, a leather Bible. So I carried it everywhere, in my bag and everything. So I just said to God, and I'd never done that before. Lord, I have put myself out there. You haven't said anything to me. I'm demanding an answer for you. Yeah. I'm going to open my Bible. Yeah. The first full chapter that I see, that I find, I'm going to read, and you're going to answer me through that chapter. Right. Yeah. And I opened Isaiah, chapter 40. Right. And what does it say now? This is amazing. It says, comfort ye, my people. Speak ye comfortably unto Jerusalem, and cry unto her that her warfare is accomplished, and that iniquity has been pardoned, for she hath received of the Lord's hand double for her transgression. Yeah. Now it says, a voice of him that is crying in the desert. Prepare ye the way of the Lord. The way that God just said, I'm coming. I'm coming now, ready or not. I'm coming. Prepare ye the way of the Lord. Every valley shall be exalted. Every mountain and hill shall be made low. Yeah. All the rough places shall be made plain, and the crooked shall be made straight. Mm-hmm. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all eyes shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord hath spoken it. Wow. I was like, I started crying all over again, and it was at that point, I believe that God just came into my life and he filled me with the Holy Spirit. And I mean, what can I say? The rest is history. Maybe what is most interesting about that is that 10 years after that, 10 years, clean. This is when God was just like training me. I was going around, just doing smaller work. I wasn't like a preacher at the time. But the first preaching assignment that I had, it was at Marlborough Church. It's a very big church, and it's a Shona speaking church. Right. And my normal church is a colored church, right.
But you grew up in Masvingo.
I grew up in Masvingo.
There's a balance of
exactly. But you'll be like used to speaking in English. You understand? So and then the Shona that I knew was Karanga. It was not Zezulu. It was not Zezulu. So some of the words, you can miss. So because I had to preach in Shona, I then reverted to now I had a Shona Bible as well. So I just, I was like, hey, wait a minute, I'm preaching in Shona. I wonder what my covenant, because in Isaiah chapter 40 is now my covenant. Yes. Chapter.
Wonder what it says.
I wonder what it says in Shona. Wow. And I was flabbergasted, when I opened. This is 10 years later. God doesn't reveal everything all at once. Mm-hmm. And when I opened my Bible, and if you open your Bible, your Shona Bible, it will say the first two words. Yeah. Nyaradzai.
Which
is my name. Wow. Nyaradzai. Yeah. So he literally called me by my name twice. Yes. And this is of course, that when God repeats himself, when he repeats himself, it is sealed, it is confirmed, like Abraham, like Samuel, like Moses. Yeah. So I was like, so God is still in the business of entering into covenants with people and calling people by their very names. I was amazed. So it's that, when you have that rich history and, that communion with God, you cannot help but have confidence, because everybody's like, where'd you get the confidence from? That's where you get the confidence from.
I get it. And that's very exciting. So you then started preaching. Your first sermon. My
first sermon, it was actually a week of prayer.
In a big congregation.
Yeah, for a whole week.
And for a whole week?
For a whole week,
and you had the sermons. Were you prepared?
Like I said, for 10 years, God was like, remember I said to him.
God was preparing you.
Yes, I said to him, I don't want anybody's sermon. I'm not going to listen to sermons. I'm not going to listen to anything. I'm going to read your word. If I'm going to read the Bible once, I'm going to read it again, and I'm going to read it again. And the only book I had was like my dad's, because my dad was a lay pastor. Okay. And a headmaster at a Christian school. So he had this book, called Highways to Happiness, which literally walks you from.
So which he wrote?
No, he didn't write, but he had it, and
it
had, because my dad died before I was born.
Okay.
So that's like the book that I had, and he had all his notes in there.
Wow.
So that's the only thing outside of the Bible that I read.
All right.
And to me it was like, oh wow, it was like God just walking me through to like teaching me and explaining to me how to live the Christian life. But
so that's where you derived your first sermons, or
not
you
from the
already
book.
had been preparing?
No, I already had, because at church we have what we call Sabbath school.
All right.
Okay, so where you just teach people. So I was like a Sabbath school superintendent.
All right.
For the longest time.
Okay.
And I was also managing I'd managed a group called Reunion. I'd managed a group called Shower Power.
Okay.
And whenever we would go all over, I would teach. I wouldn't preach. There'll always be somebody to preach, but where there was teaching, I would do that. And I'd take down notes and I'd be excited. I've just discovered this, And like when I discovered about the dinosaurs in the Bible, about fire-breathing dragons in the Bible, about unicorns, I'd get excited and I'd take notes, I'd take notes down. So every time like God was like revealing new things to me. So I had plenty of material. I didn't think so, but it seemed like I had plenty of material. Yeah.
That's quite amazing. And I'm just thinking, you being there, then starting your journey, preaching.
Yeah.
And you are in a covenant.
Yeah.
And I believe that the covenant then has kept you single. And in a sense, of course, that's the sense.
Yeah.
But then with that stigma that is already there, remember I'm talking about a male-dominated space. Then you are a female preacher, and you're single. How has that been in this journey?
It has been very interesting.
Yeah.
But you know what? If you are in the space of, let me just put it like prophetess, men are terrified of the spiritual.
Yeah.
It's easy to look at a woman as a woman, looking at her physically. You can admire her. You can say, oh, she's beautiful, or she's well-shaped, or whatever it is that you admire about her. But the minute the spiritual comes in, there is just a fear. You know what God did when Israel was having the exodus to Canaan? Yeah. And it says the fear of the Lord, or the fear of the Israelites, or God put the fear of the Israelites on all the nations.
Yes.
So they already were preconditioned to look at the Israelites this way, to say, whoa, they are coming, because they have a God behind them. Yeah. So sometimes I've had guys, and unfortunately, you also have pastors or elders, who are even married, who will come and approach you. Yeah. They're attracted to you because the minute you are in front there, men see a woman, Yes. But the minute they start to see they start to experience the heaviness of the covenant, when they see the shine of the crown that God has given you, somehow they back off. Do you know what I mean? And you, of course, as a woman, I always say this to women, to say, you know what? You stop men from approaching you before they approach you. You don't wait for a man to approach you and then you say, no, how can you? No. Men, can I just say this?
Yes.
My experience of men. Yeah. Men are very interesting creatures. They are
interesting. Nobody says men are interesting. It's always men are dogs.
No. Men are interesting. Men are very interesting. And I hope I'll come back and talk about men. Talk about men and then talk about women.
Yes.
But one thing I've noticed with men is that men, they are very good investors.
All right.
They are low risk creatures.
Yeah.
That's true,
because women are high risk creatures. Investing in a woman.
But then men
is also like building a bomb.
Well, sometimes it's a good thing if you find a good one. But the thing is, men will never go to a woman and propose love unless he's at least 75 to 80% sure he'll succeed.
Start again.
So
come again.
So I say men will not go and propose love to a woman if they have not set enough ground to make sure that at least there's 75 to 80% chances that he will succeed.
And what percentage of men are that?
That is generally all men, unless they are the crazy men.
No, because I think there are men who does that for the sport.
No. Yes, those are the crazy ones.
So
I'm talking about your normal.
And you think I'm making him chase so that when he chases me, then I'm the prize. Then he's chasing you the time that he won the race. It's 100 meters. We're done. I've won. So there are men. There are men like that.
It's true. Those are the crazy ones. I'm talking about real men. Real men who really don't want to be disappointed.
Respect themselves.
Because I also noticed that men it hurts them when they are rejected.
The kind of men that I am.
Yeah, I think so. And you know what? And also with women, and I say this to girls all the time, to say, you will have men who will come. They'll come to you and they will say something. Guys, it's the woman who determines the relationship.
Yes.
So a guy can come to you sounding flippant.
I think it's women who decide who they get into a relationship with. But it's men who decide who they get married to.
Oh no. Well, it's true. I could say, but can I say it in a different way?
Yeah.
Okay. So women have been given so much power by God, both outside and inside marriage. I hope we can come back and talk about women inside the marriage, because I think there's a disaster there.
That's fine. And as you see, we have a guest for the rest of our lives, because she's already saying, I'm going to hold you accountable.
No, I will come back. I will come back.
All right.
So you know what? A man can approach you in any way.
Yes.
But you are the one who determines the level of the relationship you're going to have with him.
As a woman.
I'll give you an example. There was a gentleman that I met, tall, dark, handsome, your typical, your gorgeous man. He was working for a huge company, had a big job, and he was single. Do you know what I mean? And he had no kids.
With your expressions.
That he was,
The springles.
So this gentleman, anga akajaidzwa, can I say that? Guys, you've got guys who are just good looking, vakajaidzwa, who are just used to, girls giving them attention. Or wanting them or whatever. So he was one such man.
All right.
But, and he saw me and he was interested. In the normal way, he was interested to any woman. I mean, in any woman.
Did you see you from the pulpit?
No. It was, I hadn't even started preaching at that time, but I was in a covenant already.
Right.
So my confidence and my space was completely different to the normal girl. Okay.
Right.
And so he approached me. And I remember exactly like what you're saying, we met somewhere. And, it was like in a restaurant, and he was just interested. And I think he sent the waiter to do the whole waiter thing, I'll pay for the bill. And, we said no, And in fact, I was annoyed because I just was not in that space. And I then walked out and he followed. I just want you to see what a guy can do, right? Walked out of the restaurant. Yeah, we're not going to order more drinks. So we then walked out. It was me and my niece. And he followed.
Was it a date?
No, it was me and my niece.
Or you were in the restaurant?
In the restaurant. He was in a restaurant.
I get it.
And he sent the waiter to say, I'll pay for your next drinks or whatever. And we're like, no, we're done.
Yeah.
And Morutora Manot.
No. I would never embarrass myself. I would never embarrass myself in that way.
Have succeeded.
In fact, I don't think that's the thing. I also think, maybe we'll talk about this later, but I don't think you should even take someone for a date who is not already giving you indicators that there's going to be something?
Well, these guys, they've got moves. So, you know what, he followed behind, and it's like, hey, ladies, da, da, da. I was not interested. I mean, he's this really excellent looking guy, but in my heart, I was like, what are the chances that this guy is a Christian? I mean, I'm looking for a Christian guy. You know, what are even the chances, you know, like... And then, you know, so he asked for my name, I refused. He asked for my number, I refused. I got into my car, you know, I think I was driving an Audi A4 at that time, like, yeah. And I got into my car, but why I mention it is because he didn't have my name, he didn't have my number. You know what he took?
Yeah.
The car registration number.
Oh.
And he spent the next 2 weeks, lunchtime, you'd drive around town looking for a navy blue Audi A4, you know, until one day he got it. And I'm talking about what a guy will do, you know what I mean? And
what a normal guy would do. Would you call that normal?
No. That's
Crazy.
what he
That's
did.
the crazy
That's
guy.
what he did. And he was the chaser, the player, understand? So to him, it was a challenge. Who's this girl? I want to find her. You know, it wasn't about he liked me, he thought I had a great character. No, it didn't have to do with that. It was just like, I want to find out about this girl, you know. And I'm going to prove her. So he found me anyway. And eventually he was like, so at least you have to give me your number. So I gave him my card, and on my business card, I never used to put my cell phone number. So what then happened was, he then started calling my secretary. You know, he'd call the phone and the landline.
Okay.
And I wouldn't talk to him until my secretary complained to say, ma'am, I've run out of excuses for this guy. Can you just tell him if you're not interested, you're not interested? Anyway, I then spoke to him, and then he begged me for my number, then I gave him. Now this is, you know, the way he hit the jugular. The first day that he phones me, I'm at home.
Yeah.
Typical player. He says to me, so are you dating somebody? I said, no, I'm not dating anybody. And then I said, are you dating somebody? And he says, yes.
Oh.
He says yes.
Are you sure that was not you?
No. No.
Because maybe
And
he
he
was
said,
just
no,
trying
never.
to
And
use
I said,
pick-up lines.
No. And for me, you don't mess around with me. Do you know what I mean? You don't do that. So then I'm like, so what do you want to do with me? You know, so why are you interested in me if you have a girlfriend? And he had the nerve to say, oh, because I wanted to see if you could help me cheat on my girlfriend. Now, this is a guy.
Where do I hide?
Now listen to the story. Listen to the story. We're talking about a woman and
This
how
is a high-level player.
like that. So you know what? When he said that, when he said that, I switched off my phone. I just cut the conversation. I remember he made about 27 or 28 missed calls, calling me back. I just didn't pick up.
Same day?
Same day, like within the next 2 hours, he was just calling and I wasn't picking up. And then he sent me a message and he says, temper, you know, can't you take a joke? So I waited about 2 hours until I was like almost going to bed. Then I just sent a message, you know, nice and clear. He didn't know who I was. He didn't know he's talking to a woman who's in a covenant with God. He didn't. He just thought he was talking to a normal woman, you know. And I remember sending him a message that set the pace for the relationship moving forward. I said to him, if you knew who you were talking to, you would have chosen your words more carefully.
Wow.
That's it. That's all I said. Do you know, from that day, you know, telling him that, oh, you know, we can be in a relationship, but I don't sleep with, you know, I don't sleep with men, that kind of thing.
Okay. What made you forgive the words?
Oh, no. What made me forgive the words is the same thing that made Christ forgive the people who were crucifying him, is because he did not know better. But now that he knew who he was talking to, he was now choosing his words more carefully. Right. That's why I didn't say, how can you talk to me like that? Hey, what do you think I am? What do you think I am? No, I didn't. That's probably what a normal girl would have said. I said, no, I will forgive you because you just didn't know who you were dealing with. But now that you know, I'm expecting you to act better. So I set the bar high for him. Yeah. And that's why I say for women, a guy can come to you anyhow, any which way. Yeah. You know, they can, whether they are serious or they're not serious. Yeah. But it's how he's received by the woman. Yeah. It's how the fear of the Lord is cast upon him when he comes into the vicinity of the woman of God, you know, that then makes him start to behave correctly.
Yeah.
And
I think that's very important, and thank you for saying this, because I've had, you know, a lot of women, you know, ladies that then come to me, for example, someone comes say, Pastor, can you pray for me because, you know, I'm attracting a lot of men that just come and because they want to sleep with me. And I'm thinking, of course, we spiritualize everything, but also sometimes you need to think and say, okay, how do you receive people when they approach you?
Yeah.
Or how do you dress? What do you put out there? One of the ladies was talking to me on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, before I pray for this person, let me check their profile.
Yeah.
And all that's there
is come and sleep with me.
Body, confidence. It's calling everyone. So I'm just saying to you, you know what? Yeah. How you behave, you know, then there's no someone that will just come from nowhere and walk over you.
No.
You are the person who sets the pace for how someone is going to respect you, how they're going to talk to you. And I think that's very important.
True, because it is said that you teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate.
Yeah.
So if you tolerate nonsense, you're going to receive nonsense.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And what that guy gave me was total nonsense.
Yeah.
And he just realized she doesn't tolerate nonsense.
All right.
And I'll tell you, you know, it took him a long time. He literally shifted. I promise you, he became so correct.
Yeah.
And even by the time I decided that I'm going to date him, you know, that I'm going to have him as my boyfriend, I think at some point, because my friends came to me and said, Nyari, are you serious with this guy? Like, you actually want to? Because panenge pari busy, you know. Exactly. And I remember I just said, to me, it was like, I don't know whether it was right or wrong at the time, but to me, it was like he was like a project. You know what I mean? I'm like, you actually correct you. Not that I'm encouraging people to do that. But at that
time, there are people who have the grace to do that.
Yeah, it's true.
There are people who have the grace.
And you can
I think there are women that have that ability that when you meet them, you're going to shift to be, you know, the right kind of person, because you know the way they treat you, the way they talk to you, the way God has graced them, you know, for that. I don't think it's for everyone.
No, it's not for everyone. It is for women who really know themselves and can see potential in a man. Do you know what I mean? Because you can see this man, you know, Ingori Mombe Amashanga, you know, but if he's actually really put in he's actually a good man at the end of the day. But maybe he's just been dealing with all kinds of women.
Yeah, he's been dealing with.
And I can tell you that when I started dating him, I remember he would be like, oh, you know, well, I can't come and see you before 8 because da 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 da. And we can't be in a restaurant because blah 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 blah. You know, or I can't. You know, I can't pick you up at the hair salon because da, 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 da. But at the back of your mind, you're not women, you know, is trying to fix his stories. You know, within 3 months, I think, of dating, I would find him, you know, at my flat, you know what I mean, waiting for me, already watching soccer.
Wow.
You know what I mean? We were doing lunch almost every day. He'll be like, so which restaurant are we going to tomorrow? We did Portuguese yesterday. I'm like, oh, okay, Sakam. All those other meetings which were there, which were girlfriends or girls, you know what I mean? He got rid of them himself. I didn't need to call any girl to say, hey, this is my boyfriend. Hey, this is what. You get what I mean? He got rid of them. And at the hair salon, he would walk into the hair salon and say, you know, so he didn't care anymore. Like he had nothing to hide anymore. He had gotten rid of everybody himself. So you get what I mean? So people actually get to a point where they change, you know. But like you're saying, it's to do with the right connection between that woman who has the grace for that and the potential of the guy, where you see, because you know what I mean? And, you know, you shouldn't even mess around with those people. But you could tell with this guy, he had that kind of interest and he had that kind of potential. But what's important is he came into my space. And when you come into my space, you're coming into my kingdom.
So that's the initial question around, how do you survive?
Yes. Oh my goodness, back to that.
Yes.
So
So I think
really,
you are answering it. That's what you're saying. When you come, then those men are in your
when
space.
you're coming in my space, you need to know where you're coming. I mean, look, you know what? In the same sense, because you're a child of God.
Yeah.
You think like God.
Yes.
You live in heavenly places.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
glory.
You're walking with God. And so the same way that people ought to be careful approaching God,
Yeah.
that's how they should be careful approaching you.
Wow.
You don't just come and walk all over my toes. You don't do that. God says, without faith it's impossible to please him. For he who comes to God, he has to know who he's coming to. I mean, you know what I mean? And you're the one who reminds people who they're coming to. You understand?
Yeah.
And I just wish the girls of this age would understand that. To say, you know what? You are a princess. You're a queen. And when they're coming, they must bow.
Wow.
They must respect.
Yes.
They must ask what the rules are around here. And I tell you the rules. You start with the 10 Commandments. You're with me. Number 2, I don't commit adultery. I don't do this. I don't do this. And you have to toe the line. You don't come and tell me what you want to do with my body. You don't come and tell me what I ought to do with my time. No, you don't. You come and you find out what the rules are around this space. And we tell you that when you're in this kingdom, this is how you operate. You're with me. And you either toe the line or you leave.
And I think this is important because I think we live in a very desperate, world where then people let, people walk over them. People let people change the rules. People, let their guard off and, go over what they value, simply because they need a man in their space. Advocate, you have so much inside of you, and I really haven't had time to really sit down and talk about a lot of things. And that's why I think so many times you say, you know what, I want to come back, because we always run out of time.
Yes,
and I'm just
that
looking
is
at
true.
time, I'm like, what?
It's gone.
Time is gone this fast. But just one last thing in the shortest possible time that you can say. You are in a covenant, and I believe that anointing is also attractive. So while you have your space, while you people can feel when they get there.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking that there are a lot of young women that are out there that love the Lord, that are in the covenant, but they also go through, that time, because when God is dealing with you, sometimes, you can't deal with people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we can't forget we are spiritual, but also these spiritual bodies surviving in the
human.
flesh.
Yeah.
How do you tame the flesh in the most shortest way?
My goodness, the flesh is just the hardest thing to tame.
Yeah.
It is, but I think for me, before I get into a relationship with someone, because I have been in relationships, but before I get into a relationship with someone, I sort of like set the rules, If I'm getting into a relationship with a gentleman, I'll tell you, like, maybe the one person that I got into a relationship with, I just say to them, okay, to start off with, before we get into this relationship, you need to know some set rules about me, okay?
1, 2, 3.
So that there's no crisis of expectation. If you can't handle it, you walk. And that's what I'm expecting also from you. So number one, at that time, I happened to be, I think, 1.5 years older than that gentleman.
Okay.
So I said, so let us be very clear that I am 1.5 years older than you. Okay?
All right.
You are with me. Let's just set it there. If you're not happy to do with somebody who's like 1.5 years older than you, then let's kill it here. You know. Number two, I don't do sex.
Okay.
Just straight up.
Yeah.
I don't. You're also doing it to protect yourself, because it's not like, you because you're spiritual, you're no longer human, If you're touched in the right way, and, something might happen. So you're actually doing it so that this person is also in that space.
Okay.
And and I think, I can't remember, I think it was something to do with, I think he had dated somebody that I knew before. So I said, you have dated somebody that I've known before, and I'm going to try and clear it with her, to see if it's okay. So I mean, here I'm just saying, where you are being completely open with somebody, and then you tell them, these are my parameters. And the thing again, maybe lastly, I would know that if I actually try to do anything with anybody, when you're in a covenant, it's a scary thing, because a covenant, covenants are covenants of blood.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean?
I get it.
And where, the Israelites, being the covenant people of God, he came and died for them.
Yeah.
So I would know that if I ever did anything with a person, it could mean death to them, or it could mean injury to them, or it could mean, you get what I mean? So it went beyond just, I want to have some fun, I want to feel this way. Yeah. It was, I knew that, when God comes into your life, it's not just to say, I'm in a covenant with God, so that you like show off. But there is death there, you know what I mean? There. So it's that serious. So I'll be like, I'm saying this to you to protect you, because if you actually get through to me, then God's going to step in, because I'm not my own anymore. I've given my life in time. That's like that into the sister, but not in that way, So God will actually step in, and he will, the whole lightning will come from heaven thing. That's actually real.
This is deep.
Yeah. So it's not, so God actually protects you even from yourself.
All right.
Because he knows that we are human, and sometimes he will step in and like, can I just say one thing? I know the time is out.
Yes.
But just one thing. There was a time that I was actually tempted, when I was dating this particular gentleman. And I remember just praying to God about it, to say, Lord, panapa, Guess what happened?
Yeah.
I think for the first time in I don't know how many years, I got a boil.
Oh.
And he got 2 boils.
Wow.
That's what I'm saying, when you're physical, but when you're in a covenant, you're spiritual.
Yes.
And I remember that the boil came here and then it went there. It was like God saying, leave this person now. And it was telling him, leave this woman. Whoa. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And the minute I broke it off, he cried, because he really, really wanted the relationship. But the minute I broke it off, the boils disappeared. Oh. So it's that deep. So it's not just about, deep. Am I feeling fancy? Do I miss this? That it goes beyond that. Yeah. God actually steps in. That's where you notice that you're no longer your own. When you enter into a covenant, you've literally, how can I say it, in the best way possible, sold your soul. You're no longer doing your own thing. Even if you want to, God will step in and protect you from yourself.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, we are not out of conversations, but we are out of time. But be sure that Advocate will be back as she promised. And there's some stories that he touched that, we are tempted to ask questions, to know more what happened. But there are a lot of lessons that we have learned today about being in covenant with God. How do you survive? How do you sustain? But how do you also continue to serve God, especially in a challenging environment? Thank you so much for coming through, and I appreciate it.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
So we hope to see you again in the next and another episode.
And so you shall.
And I hope people are excited, and I hope you guys are excited. Please leave a comment, make sure that you share, and make sure that you subscribe so that we keep giving you good content. This has been the Love, Life and God podcast, and see you in the next episode.